Welcome to the Future of Supply Chain, presented by Dynamo. Each episode, we sit down with leaders in the industry as we build the future of supply chain together. Let's get into the show. Here's our host, Santosh Sankar.
Hey, ladies and gents, welcome back to the Future of Supply Chain podcast. I'm your host, Santosh Sankar, and joining me today, all the way from Paris, France, is our good friend, Renan Devillieres. Hopefully I pronounced your last name correctly. Alex did help
perfectly.
me. Renan is founder and CEO of OSS Ventures, who have over the years been a great thought partner and co-investor of ours. So it's great to have you on here, Renan.
It's great to be there. Thank you for the invitation, Santosh.
So I would love to just start off with, give our listeners the quick 90 seconds on OSS Ventures and your approach to building and investing in startups, all focused on the industrial sector.
Sure. So the one-liner is OSS Ventures is a structure that builds and invests in startups for the operational sector. And so the slightly longer version is that we have 20 people based in Paris, or 20 people visit 1 to 3 to 5 factories per week. We look for pain points. We try to understand and be the best informed people on earth about what people in manufacturing are going through. And so it helps us either building great startups with incredible founders and or investing in already existing solutions.
And what's the Renan story? How did you get into the world of like industry and manufacturing that ultimately is what birthed OSS Ventures?
It's actually a funny story. I got into operations by total random luck. I was an economist at the OECD because I had to pay back my studies in France and I had to be a public servant for 2 years. So I was an economist for 2 years and 1 day because I hated it, because I wanted things that were just more down to earth. And I told myself, okay, I have to do something down to earth. And so I somehow ended in a consulting company called McKinsey & Company. And my first assignment was operations because they figured out, okay, that guy's a nerd. He knows how to do Excel. So we'll give him some supply chain things. And so for the first time in my life, I went to a factory and they said, you need to figure out this supply chain thing. And I loved it. And then for 4 years, I did nothing but operations. And then I became a factory director because I was tired of consulting. And then I pretty much worked in manufacturing for 10 years. And so I love it because I'm a nerd. Like, I love complex things and I love thinking and I love complex systems. And I honestly think that there are only two things that are really, really interesting if you're a nerd. And it's either a tech company or a factory, because those are two big complex systems with flows everywhere and everything. And that's just so interesting. And so if you played SimCity or Civilization, you know what I mean. Like,
That's right.
Interesting.
I love that. I've never heard that story in that detail. So, you know, you took all of that background knowledge, understanding. You set up OSS Ventures, and what's unique about OSS Ventures is that the center you have the startup studio concept or venture builder concept, as it's called in Europe. Why did you land on this as one of the ways, or maybe the best way, to create the industrial technology startups of the future?
So when I stopped being operational, I created a tech startup in San Francisco and I ended up selling it. So I had some money. And so I figured out, okay, I'm going to be an angel investor in an early stage startup in tech for operations. So I did what any slightly bizarre guy would do. I opened up an Excel and I did 400 calls for startups that I wanted to invest in. And I realized that with my means, I had to set up an investment fund or I had to build the things. So I started to build the things. And so we went on with that, and we found out down the line that there are very good reasons for setting up a venture builder / startup studio in manufacturing, because manufacturing is hard to understand, hard to penetrate. It's hard to build in because you have all those cybersecurity issues and data issues and everything. And also, the very best of the tech people don't go in manufacturing. And
Mhm.
people who know manufacturing, they don't know how to scale a tech company. And so those are the core reasons why I think a venture builder model is the right one for at least part of the issues that the manufacturing world is facing, because I basically do a very simple thing. I preempt relationship with the industrials. So I have already lasting relationship for 2 or 3 years. And so they already are sharing their buying points. And so when I enter with a new startup, I'm basically gaining 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years of like
That's right.
trust built. And so we can just get right to solving the thing. And also I'll take only people from the tech world, 0 people from the manufacturing world. And so I always say, like, would you give the position of a factory director to someone who cannot read a 3D scan? No, you wouldn't. So don't give the tech CEO position to someone who can code. Like, it's very simple. And
Yeah.
so I bring those people to the manufacturing world, and then we have like all those tech cool stacks that we reuse from a startup to another, that can leverage data, structure that is the same as big bulky ERPs and blah, 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 cybersecurity, whatever. And so you gain time, and so you build faster.
And are there certain traits you mentioned you prefer not to work with founders from the manufacturing industry, but are there other traits, qualities you've come to observe might be related to successful outcomes over time?
Wow. If you do have those, I will gladly take them. Uh,
Yeah.
we have empty traits. So we are looking for people who have an insane amount of grit, because behind every success is like 15 failure. And so I don't know who said that success is going from failure into another failure without losing enthusiasm, but that's basically entrepreneurship for you. So grit's very important. Also, one thing that is disproportionately predictive of odds of success is, we always ask, is there anything that your top 0.001% in the world have? And
Hmm.
so if someone has done something truly extraordinary, it probably means that they have some extraordinary capability. And maybe that capability can translate into building a successful company. And so you have to be in the top 0.001. We tend to really, really, really love people who can learn insanely fast. So be it a hard topic, but also changing their behavior, being able to successfully change themselves into the version that is needed by the company. And then that's pretty much it. We have, of course, a list of hard skills and everything about the founders that we look for, but the reality of it is we're mostly looking for that. And so far, I'm touching wood right now, but so far about half of our startups are on track to do 10 million revenue on year 5, which I've been told is one of the of magnitude better than like taking just an average startup and doing anything.
For sure. For sure. And I'm going to kind of lean into that, right? Like we're at the start of 2025, new year, new things ahead. What are key areas you and the team at OSS Ventures are excited to build around? What problems are you spending your time understanding better so you can then maybe find the right team or assemble the right team to go build against?
Yeah, so there are three big things that we are looking forward. The first is agents, of course. And so our high level theory is as follows. When the steam machine was invented, we went from having 10 people doing manual work to one guy and 10 machines, and the one guy is troubleshooting machines and making the machines work together and everything. And we think so that took 20 to 30 years. And there was that dream of the machine working alone, but it never materialized. It was always one guy and 10 machines. And so we think today you go to a supply chain department, there are 20 guys with Excel sheets. And so we think it will be one guy and 10 AI agents. So that's a big thing. And it's more white collar than blue collar.
That's right.
So that's our first theme. And this can be like, there are so many categories: buying, procurement, transportation, a lot of categories. So that is the first theme that we are very, very excited on. Second theme is we call that glocalization. So basically producing a lot with very long supply chains, with heavy dependence on China, and having a product done that has to do 3 times around the world. I don't know if you've seen, but Palmer Luckey from Underhill, he told that the US has 8 days worth of bomb capacity before going out of bombs.
Yep.
And so we think basically that mass production will be local again. So probably supply chains are going to be not that long anymore. Vertical integration is going to be a thing. Most probably in vertical integration, you need software to do that. So there is a lot of things to explore here, saying, okay, the basic footprint of the supply chain of the world of physical things will change.
It's going to change. Agreed.
So that's a very big thing that we have. And the third theme, it's actually interesting. We think that AI revolution, most of the value will accrue at the very beginning of the chain and the very end. So we are betting big on the application layer, and we are betting big on energy, data centers, and we don't bet on fundamental models at all because we don't understand.
Same.
It's a whole different game. And so at the end of the day, compute is going to be the currency of the world, and compute can be proxied by energy.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, those are the 3 things.
Amazing. I want to pull that thread around the reshoring of certain manufacturing operations, and the way we think about it at Dynamo is this will happen initially in industries where there's a lot of pricing power, so there's an inelasticity around price. Just because price goes up doesn't mean demand's necessarily going to be impacted. And like our phones are a really good example, right? The chips and the batteries are now like there's a lot of work and capital going around. How do we bring some of these back towards home, if you would? The one thing that I feel strongly around is, at least in the US, we squandered away the knowledge and understanding as to how to manufacture with excellence. And because we also now have much higher cost of labor, automation is going to have to be part of the solution. So how do you think about the opportunity around manufacturing automation? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Which I would welcome, but would love to hear your thoughts.
So my ability to predict the future is very poor, but I'll give it a try. What we hold for true is we think that reshoring cannot be done on like you cannot put a price on insurance basically. So if you reshore at a higher cost, it will fail. So it means that you need to reshore with a cost base that is different. And so we are big believers that the products will change. So for example, when you look at the Tesla cost advantage, it comes through automation, it comes through a product thinking that is very different, lowering the complexity of almost everything and doing software integration that is very deep in the car. And so we think that the reshoring is primarily a product challenge. So redesigning the products, because the products that you design when you have very cheap labor, very long supply chain are not the same as the products you design when you have a different set of contracts. So we are big believer that the product lines will change. Second thing is, we think that in the grand scheme of things, products and supply chain are way too complex right now. And if you look at BYD, if you look at DJI, if you look at Tesla, if you look at Underhill, if you look at all those wildly successful physical products companies, their product line is way simpler. The average BOM of a BYD car is 16 times lower, like simpler than the average BOM of a Stellantis car. And so it's classic innovator's dilemma. Like you have the old product that was perfectly fitted through decades of Kaizen to the old paradigm of the cost basis. but the new cost basis needs new products. And so if I could, I would short all the products that we call chocolate covered broccoli, which is taking the old products and just saying, I reshore it, fuck it. No, won't work. So yeah, this is the way we think about it. In terms of automation, the biggest mistake you can make is automating waste. We see a lot of automation that is chocolate covered broccoli and just automating a product that should not be designed the way it is right now, or automating a certain part of a design or a way of producing things that is not adapted to current challenge. For example, when you see Boom Supersonic, I have mad respect for what they are doing. Boom Supersonic is 1 or 2 orders of magnitude simpler than current airliners.
Yep.
And the way that they are manufacturing it is way simpler and is coherent with the new production paradigm. And so we are betting big on that and betting big on that huge trend. And so if I could, I would short all the people doing the chocolate broccoli thing, and I would long people actually doing the work and rethinking the footprint and the product and the production model all at the same time, which is an immense undertaking. And also for us too, it's good news because it means that would you rather be the very big old company having to change everything, or a fresh new startup that can start from a white blank canvas? Debatable.
There's pros and cons, but I think you're right. We've been looking at companies that are allowing and affording that type of redesign, right? How do you look at your existing SKUs? Which SKUs need to be redesigned as you think about reorganizing your supply chain? And in that process, naturally, there are going to be SKUs that you realize, hey, it's not going to be profitable, or the volume of purchases don't justify the headache of keeping it around, and you relinquish that, right? You let it go. But for those things that do have meaning, are key drivers of revenue and growth, you'll rebuild, you'll rethink them, and then you can build a supply chain behind it that supports that. And there's a whole lot of benefit that agentic tooling can also afford in order to shrink the timeline, but also the perceived complexity of a human going through all that, right? That's just something we're not good at as humans. But you know what? Systems and agents can be very good at it if they're built the right way. But I'm going to kind of move along to the next topic, which is sustainability, right? Sustainability has kind of come and gone. It's unfortunately been politicized, especially here in the US. But how do you think about this? Are there opportunities around sustainability? It feels like as end buyers maintain their sustainability conscientiousness of the product, that's going to have to flow its way back through the value chain as to how we source, but also manufacture a lot of product. What do you think?
So we try to stay very aware of people selling sustainability, because that's frankly bad business. It's been politicized, as you say. The willingness to pay is really depends on so many things. It's really geographical also. Like I think there are like 36 ways of CO2 accounting, depending on where you are. So we always try to go first principles at OSS. So what we think is true. Climate change is there, and it's going to have a lot of implication on the availability and the cost of natural resource. It's going to have a lot of implications on the insurance business and how you can insure part of your thing. And so if your supply chain is fragile because there is like a lot of weakness in your supply chain, is going to be hell. That is one. Two is the price of input material, raw material, resource is already a topic of geopolitical strategy. And when you do physical things, it's a very hard topic to navigate. Lots of uncertainty can kill businesses. So that's two. And 3 is we think that for the foreseeable future, let's say that sustainability is having a good risk assessment of your company, and ultimately it's a risk premium on your company as a whole. So that's like the base truth that we say. And so we don't go into politicized topic. We don't go into all that. Like I was a factory director, so we tend to be very pragmatic people. So when you say that, what we see and what we're excited about is with agents also, the amount of work that can be done to truly assess at a strategic level, but also at a down to each SKU, knowing exactly what is the exact supply chain that you have. Like before, you couldn't answer a question such as, if there is a fire in Amazonia, will my supply chain will be impacted, and what should be my optimal sourcing strategy? You couldn't do that because it's too complex, because it's too much work, and because you ask a team of 10 PhD to do one model, but then the fire is not in Amazonia, it's in Congo, and what happens? So now you can. And so we are very excited because at the end of the day, it's about this. It's about resilience of the companies, and it's about good business and having a sensible footprint. What we are seeing a lot is that the funding for ESR companies and all those topics and everything is very, very fluctuant. And so we tend, as a factory director, I really dislike variability. So I tend to stand away from that.
I like that. I like that. It's probably one of the more thoughtful responses that I've had to this question that I ask in various formats. But I'm going to push ahead here. And as I was prepping for this episode, it's probably about a decade now where I ended up in a room with the manufacturing leader at GE. And he told me something that still stuck with me. And it's something like, if we botch manufacturing technology implementation, Santosh, it's not really about my job. We have GDP level implications of that botch, right?
Smart dude.
And, and the reason it's with me is it's about 10 years ago that the whole initial Industry 4.0 push began. And there's not a whole lot of winners we can observe necessarily from that initial wave. And I attribute a lot of that to go-to-market, right? A very pragmatic buyer. You could call them even risk-averse depending on the organization because of the risk on the other side, right? And I'd be curious, you've built a company yourself. You've seen several companies both succeed and not. Are there any hacks you have or tips and tricks for the founders listening in selling these types of products to a manufacturing customer base?
Oh, don't start me on that. It's my favorite
Let's do
topic.
it.
It's
That's
my
why we're
favorite
here.
Topic. So I think one of the issues, and this is why I started studio also, one of the issues of manufacturing tech is there are too many engineers and not enough very smart go-to-market / revenue people. So you told about advice. The first would be, if as a founder you are able to articulate, this is my target market, I am going to attack here with that kind of buyer, and here is why it will be, maybe because his alternative is this. And as a company, I could have had those 4 other strategies, but they are not right, and here is why, and I will choose this strategy and not the 4 others. Then you're on the right track. The worst answer is, I do channel partners because my company is 12 engineers and I don't want to hire 10 people. Please don't. And then, so you're right that, I really like what that guy at G said to you. I honestly think we manufacturing / operations people, we did a bad job in the last 15 years. So exporting everything to China, very little innovation when you look at it. Like the chair you are sitting on has seen no innovation in the last 20 years. Everything around you has been done in the factory, and you could have the same picture taken 20 years ago, would not differ in a design would, but apart from iPhones, nothing has changed. And so we did a very bad job. And as you said, the very bad job can be seen in day-to-day physical things that we have around us, but it can be seen in the society. Like the Chinese thing and the fact that there are no good jobs in the US and in Europe because, and the rise of people being very angry because they were working in a factory and they have been offshored to China and everything. So the society part of it as a model kind of sucks. And the products kind of suck also. So, okay, when you compare that to tech, you 20 years ago versus now, tech has changed everything and the products kind of are awesome. And so if I can do my share to in 20 years to have the same level of innovation in physical products, and in 20 years, I think we are going to not recognize the world we live in from a physical point of view. Cars will drive themselves. We are going to catch rockets back and go to Mars and back. And we are going to have food that is different if you are a woman or a man, if you are overweight or not. You are going to cater food to each person. You are going to have all of those amazing things because we have done the work on the back end to have different factories. And so if you're a founder, I would say you need to be able to have that grand vision for a certain category and then find the strategy that makes it so that your way of conquering the market is the right one. For example, everybody speaks about electric vehicle. The real genius was selling a very expensive electric car that does not work to rich people to get the funding to be able to do an electric car that works for non-rich people. And that was genius. And the engineering part was good also, but that was the genius part. And so go-to-market is actually very difficult when you want to sell to manufacturing, and you need to be really, really thought out and know partner channel and consultants will not resell your thing.
I love that. Music to my ears. Music to my ears. So I'm going to step forward because I've been a beneficiary of this sitting in a boardroom with you. But building startups in France has its own nuances, right? And the first thing that comes to mind is managing people. It's not as easy necessarily to deal with underperforming staff or aligning talent requirements to the stage a business is at. And around this is a lot of the notice periods and labor regulation. But I'd be curious, what tips do you have for founders building in France that are trying to better understand this and cope with this?
Yeah. So engineers are 40% less expensive in France than in the US, and their technical ability is the same, but their organizational ability is way lower. And my first investor, so I created a company in the US actually, and my first investor said to me, you know, Renan, the main issue with you French people is that you don't hire people, you adopt them. And that is true. It is very hard to let people go in France. You have to pay like 3 months severance, and the notice period is like 2 to 3 months. And so you need to have tight performance reviews, and you need to get in your business plan saying, I will fire between 10 and 30% of people, and it's going to be a pain in the butt, and it's the cost of doing business. And so the cost of doing business from an HR point of view is actually less fluid than in the US. And it's a pain in the butt to manage. Like I was a manager in the US and I was a manager in France. And let me say, being a manager in the US is a better position, but you have to make do with what you have.
And on the other side, the thing that I've gained greater appreciation for, and this is changing, it's changing very quickly, is the access to public sector funding, grants, different programs that the French government had historically had. What are do's, don'ts that you advise founders as they contemplate this? Because this is equally a dynamic we see in other European markets, in Canada, and at times even in the US.
Yeah. So in Europe and in France, you have a very bizarre public sector funding thing going on, which is not that much rational. And you can get up to 0.5x to 1.5x your dilutive funding in non-dilutive funding, which is like, what the hell? So I have two advice for founders. The first advice is do your business plan with zero and then chase the most. Never count on it as a recurring or whatever. Never count that it will come to your bank account. It's not going to. So do your business as if this was zero, and then everything added is a bonus. You can get that additional IR, but don't treat it as money because everything can change overnight. So that's first advice. And second advice is that is a secret that we are doing for all the startups. So because this is France, and it's a very bizarre market. I'm a free market kind of guy, which makes me an exception in France. But you have those guys, those companies that are ex-employees from all those public sector things. And they will, for you, identify which grant to apply to what, blah, blah, blah. And they will write the report for you. And they take 2% of the public funding. And so that means zero defocus for your startup. And you just treat it as a revenue line that you may or may not get. And so, because the bad part of that is there are a lot of startups in France and Europe that are actually grant chaser, and they are not doing any work. They are just chasing grants, and they go nowhere. They don't aim at having a good business. They aim at being at the right cocktail parties to get some grants, which sucks. And so never be that company. Just treat it as another cost of doing business in Europe, like side thing.
So with that, Renan, I'm going to bring us home here. I like to finish with something that I call rapid fire. I'm going to give you two options, and I'd like you to pick one and just explain why. You ready?
Let's go.
iPhone or Android?
Android.
Why?
Open source.
All right. Well, I am a proud user of a Pixel. I've never owned an iPhone. If I have, it's probably my second phone. I used to carry two phones. So I'm very glad to hear. Next up, MES or the ERP itself?
No, please don't. It's painful, it's bulky, it has been coded in the 80s. Neither. I refuse to choose.
But if you had to, it's Bonks. It's actually a third answer, I guess.
Okay, yes. Then it's Bonks. It's one of the companies we are co-invested in. It's an awesome company. Yeah.
And then lastly, deep space or the deep ocean?
Deep space.
Amazing. Well, with that, Renan,
several order of magnitude larger.
I appreciate you taking the time here, sharing your wisdom around industrials and manufacturing with us, and look forward to seeing you here in a couple of weeks in Paris.
Yeah, you'll be welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. Cheers.
Cheers, Santosh.
Thanks for watching. Follow us at dynamo.vc for all the latest episodes. We'll see you next time.